Titans training camp here on 104.5 The Zone. We are so excited to be here for the next 3 hours and to get you involved, get you a little closer to the weekend, and with each passing day, closer to actual football being played. I am very excited because of where we are sitting at this point. I've been as far away from the practices as humanly possible because they got 3 training camp fields out here at St. Thomas Sports Park, and now finally they've found the one in front of the tent. So we're going to be able to give you fantastic coverage all throughout the course of the day. If you want to get involved, 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045. We got cornerback Kristian Fulton at 10:45. Soon as practice wraps up here, a little earlier today, but well-deserved based on just how ungodly hot it has been on these practice fields. Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio, who is also out here at training camp practice. Coach Mack will join us for his regular segment at 12:20. Don't miss out. Mack's going to have a bunch of good stuff from what he's been watching at training camp today. We have a ton of Titan stuff to get into. I want to spend a lot of time on A.J. Brown today because he has been, to this point, the story of training camp. But we got to start with what happened this morning. Rex Rhodes out here trying to hammer toss a backpack at me. Don't pull anything, all right? You're getting old. You look great, though. 615-737-1045. We have to start with the United States women's national team. This morning, I was watching it on my phone as I was getting ready to head out to training camp. The women absolutely dominating. Emily Proud giving me the fist, girl power, as she walks by here from our spot at St. Thomas Sports Park. It's just fun to have everybody out here today. But anyway, the U.S. women's national team beating the Netherlands, penalty shootout this morning. Very, very early start to that game, but they are now in the semifinals of the Tokyo Olympics. And, I mean, it was so fitting. Lucas, I know you were locked on to this game this morning. By the way, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am well. How are you?
Oh, I could be worse. The fan is directly on me. The practice is directly in front of me. And it's a beautiful day to talk about the Titans. But we have to start with the soccer team first.
Yes, nothing like a good PK shootout to start your day on a Friday.
I mean, honestly, normalize sports that start at 8 a.m. while you're getting ready for your day. That was a fantastic way. It's been the best part of the Olympics so far as I'm concerned. But the way that they did it, the goalkeeper today, absolutely spectacular. Remind me, Alyssa Nair, is that how I pronounce her last name?
Yeah, Alyssa Nair, a 33-year-old from, I believe, Stamford, Connecticut.
Absolute stud throughout the course of the game, able to keep the U.S. alive in the shootout at the end. And then Megan Rapinoe, fittingly, hitting the game-winning kick, beat the Netherlands and advanced this U.S. women's national team to the semifinals. I could not have enjoyed that more. Honestly, I think of all the Olympic sports so far, because you guys are well aware of my perpetual disdain for USA basketball at this point. They have, or at least on the men's side of things. The men continue to disappoint me. And that's been, historically my favorite part of the Olympics to watch, outside of swimming, gymnastics, of course. Simone Biles is not going to be a part of the competition moving forward in what should have been her crowning moment as one of the best American gymnasts, if not the best American gymnast of all time. This should have been her crowning achievement. Instead, unfortunate that she left. Fortunate for her and glad for her that she did it, but unfortunate to see her leave for all of us who were, very, very excited to have her as a part of the competition. 615-737-1045. Jeff is already chirping at me. Lucas, in the comments, Jeff Addy7 on Twitter. You said the women's national team dominated. How is a penalty shootout to win dominating? Inquiring soccer minds want to know. Okay.
I mean, yeah, to that point, honestly, the U.S.
goalkeeper was dominant.
The goalkeeper, Alyssa Nair, was dominant today. She did have one mistake that led to a Dutch goal, but she was dominant. I will say U.S. can consider themselves lucky to get out of this game with a win because Netherlands have a ton of individual quality, a ton of chances kind of missed late because of Alyssa Nair. But the U.S. had as many chances too. Cut off sides a bunch, tired legs late. I don't know if dominant's the right word, but if they do win gold, then I guess you can't say they're anything but dominant.
615-737-1045. I just like to see the women's team succeed in soccer. I don't know why I feel like I root so much harder for them than I do any other Olympic team sport. I guess, because, of course, when you have the individuals are easier to root for. They're easier to gravitate towards in the Olympic events. But always the U.S. women's national team is my favorite of the Olympic teams to be able to watch. 615-737-1045. Now, I don't know, though, Lucas, because we went back and forth. We put polls up today. At Buck Reising is where you vote on the polls, of course, if you would like to get involved with the conversation. I would say to you, though, that we thought about putting up a poll that was asking the audience whether they were rooting for or against the United States women's national team, because they are as polarizing as anybody in the Olympic Games, and you dissuaded me off that.
Well, we've already got Mark in the chat saying, I was cheering hard for the Netherlands. As far as I'm concerned, we don't have a USA women's national team.
There it is. What?
Good American spirit, right, Mark?
I didn't, but see, you were trying to back me off of egging people like Mark on, and Mark Mabry is one of our great listeners that always hangs out in the Zone TV chat, where you can basically hang out at training camp with us on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and Twitch. So Mark is always here, and we love Mark. But Mark, you and I could not possibly disagree more on the idea that you're cheering hard for the Netherlands. As far as and he writes, as far as I can tell, the USA doesn't have a women's national soccer team. How are people like that?
But they do, and they're really good.
What? I mean, they're the best. Like, they're literally the best at what they do. They make the men look so much worse just because of how much more dominant, just historically, before who was it earlier that jumped down my throat? Jeff came after me, inquiring. He said acquiring soccer minds. So, Jeff, if you're going to criticize my soccer knowledge, then I'm going to criticize your grammar. Do better. 615-737-1045.
The men are in the Gold Cup final, though.
The men are in the Gold Cup final. So, and the men won recently. So that's exciting as well. I don't mean to diminish. Anything that the men are doing. I just, historically, the women's team is the more exciting, the more engaging, the more dominant of the two teams. But we are going to spend a lot more time on football over the course of the day. If you didn't see the breaking news yesterday, the SEC officially extended invitations to Texas and Oklahoma, a unanimous vote, which we will talk about later in the show. But coming up next, I mean, we have to get to the story of what this Titans training camp has been so far. The story of this Titans training camp so far has been the return of one particular player and the way that he is absolutely schooled. Now, again, we have seen 2 days of legitimate on-field competition. And whether or not this is something that we should put too much stock into, because it should be noted that he is not out here today. He was doing a little extracurricular work off on the sidelines while the rest of the team went through individual drills. But what we're going to talk about today is A.J. Brown and how much stock to put into his dominant performance thus far. 615-737-1045. What most excites you about A.J. Brown returning to the field for the Tennessee Titans? Because I can tell you what we've seen through 2 days here so far. I don't know if the videos that are being taken and posted on social media can accurately describe what the energy around him has been. And it's only through 2 days. So that's basically the course of the conversation I want to have today. How excited are you? But how much stock do you legitimately put into something like this so far? Because there have been observations about people like Racey McMath, who have had a good camp so far. Breon Borders has been exceptional in the defensive back competition for those last few roster spots that he will be pushing for to be an important depth piece on this team. I think, though, that there are some things that do legitimately translate or are important to take stock of right now that otherwise you might dismiss as, oh, well, it's so early in training camp. How are we actually going to be able to tell how this is going to matter almost a month and a half from now when they play a game against the Arizona Cardinals on September the 12th, their season opener at Nissan Stadium. We'll get into that coming up next. We welcome your calls as well, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Reising. This is 1045 The Zone.
3 the Pro Way, taking you inside the transition from retired athlete to business. Get inside the business minds of Tennessee football legends Joey Kent and Kevin Dyson. 3 the Pro Way, every Monday morning at 8. Download now at Apple Podcasts. Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Buck Reising back with you. My good friend Gary Ashton recently told me that people walk up to him all the time and say, don't sell without the intel. That's because it's true. Now is a fantastic time to sell in Nashville, but you can't do it without the intel. And no one has better intel than the Gary Ashton team. Intel so you can sell your house without any showings or staging. Intel on where to find your next home so you can sell your current one while the market is still hot. Intel that helps you win the buyer battle and cash in on your home equity now. Everyone else is getting the same information and competing for the same properties. GaryAshton.com gives you the edge with the best real estate intel in Nashville. Plus, the Gary Ashton team is the official real estate agent of the Tennessee Titans. Get the confidence to sell your home without the stress and with time to find your dream address by calling the Gary Ashton team with RE/MAX Advantage today at 615-301-1650 or visit GaryAshton.com. Remember, don't sell without the intel.
Brent Doherty here, thinking about taking a big summer road trip before you put your family in the car.
babysitting me today. Kristian is out here babysitting me today. Apparently, we need like a squad of 10 people to make sure that I'm able to get this thing off the ground. Live from St. Thomas Sports Park, Titans training camp. They are currently going through, it looks like a little bit of 7-on-7 right now as the media watches on directly in front of me. This is a lovely view to be able to have today, especially given that we're going to be talking about wide receivers. But we're just, I think, Lucas, it's been a while since I've paid a fine, and I'm not sure who I blamed for something that was probably my fault. But I think Andrew just threw you under the bus. You guys have been building chemistry. You guys have been building chemistry back there behind the glass. Now he comes out here with me one day, and now he is in the process, as you try to unseat me from the throne. Andrew is trying to undermine you. It is true Game of Thrones behind the scenes at 104.5 The Zone. Nobody can trust anybody. Chaos is a ladder. I just rewatched that, by the way. Too much time as I try to get all my pop culture in before
the whole
football
show
starts. Over the course of probably a month.
So you're watching that and Sopranos?
No, I took a pause on Sopranos. I got to the point, I don't know why, like the last 2 seasons of Sopranos, my attention span starts to fray, Yeah. I don't know why that is. I just think that there's so much of it, and the episodes are an hour long. I just don't have the attention span. I needed a halftime break, so instead I started another ungodly long series in Game of Thrones.
I'm currently in a race against the Sopranos prequel movie to finish my rewatch.
No, that's fair. That's probably how. See, but you have a stated goal. You're on a timeline. You're working under a deadline. Typically, I work better under a deadline, so maybe that's how I should approach this. But deadlines is not something that they give us when it comes to Titans players and Titans injuries, right? Also, remember that Bud Dupree went on the COVID-19 list yesterday, the team announced, after they cleared us all off the practice field. I mean, you, of course, continue to monitor that situation, but this is something that we all know is not going to be uncommon throughout the course of the season. I guess the best thing that you could say at this point is I'm sure it will change his workout routine, and it's unclear as to whether he's tested positive or was just a close contact. It's important to say that. But how it may not affect his progress wholesale. I think he is at the point in his rehabilitation, based on the videos that you see and what he's told us that he's been doing at Exos, that the majority of the rehab to strengthen that knee has been underway. Now it's just about rebuilding the muscle memory and making sure that he can still function at a high level once he returns to the field. So there may be some delays in that, but at this point he was already being delayed, ending up on the physically unable to perform list to start camp. Now, somebody who is not physically unable to perform, and if you want to get involved in the conversation, 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045, because I got Carrie Benford in the chat on YouTube asking me about Des Fitzpatrick, who I won't be able to tell you what he's doing right now because this portion of practice not currently open to the media. But Des Fitzpatrick we'll get into momentarily. The place that I want to start, though, is with A.J. Brown. Now, it has been some time since we've seen A.J. Brown do substantial work on a practice field out here at St. Thomas Sports Park, right? He played in 14 games last year. He started 12. He had the 2 knee injuries in either knee, and it was unclear, really, how he was able to persevere through that, because remember, he does the Instagram Live. He goes on post-op. He seems to be a little out of it. And he's saying, they thought my season was done in week 2. They thought my season was done in week 2, and still I found a way to persevere. Now, he was very embarrassed about that after the fact, but consider this. A.J. Brown on 2 bad knees, when everybody thought his season was done in week 2, played 759 snaps, up from 695. He played more games as a rookie and found a way to increase his snap count substantially in year 2. His receptions up by 22. His yardage totals up from 1,051 to 1,075. Touchdowns, 11 up from 8. He was fantastic. And I think we saw a hugely diminished version of A.J. Brown a year ago. So when he's out here just absolutely schooling dudes, and listen, everybody's getting the work from A.J. Brown so far through the first 2 days of practice. Janoris Jenkins, Jackrabbit, Chris Jackson, the rookie 7th-round pick from last year, Breon Borders, who has had a nice camp so far. but everybody is getting that work from A.J. Brown at this point. And I was watching this over the last couple of days and going back through some of the highlights that our media colleagues would post on social media and thinking to myself, how much stock should I put into this? It's 2 days of training camp. He is supposed to look like this. One-on-ones eminently favor the offense. Nobody is disputing this, but he just looks so much better. And I think it's a fair assessment to say that I think we could see A.J. Brown take a substantial leap in year 3, provided that his health is maintained. If he was able to do that, hobbling around on 2 bad knees a year ago, how much better can this dude do? He is somebody who he didn't quite match his yards after catch production from 2019, but everything else, the dominant game-changing performance that you watch when he's trying to make a catch for a first down in Baltimore, and instead he drags 4 Ravens defenders across the goal line to score for a touchdown on 2 bad knees late in the season. He's somebody who continually shows up and makes game-changing plays. A.J. Brown's performance last year, by far and away, becomes so much more impressive when you consider the adversity that he's had to overcome throughout the course of his sophomore year. Last year being weird anyway. We don't know how, we don't know. We're not in the treatment rooms. We don't know physically what the injuries were. We were told that Adam Schefter rather reported that he had a bone bruise in one knee, but we still don't know what was nagging him in the other knee and which knee, in fact, was the bone bruise. It's something that if you're buying stock in any of these players, it's crazy to say that the dude who is probably your best wide receiver on the team, on a team that has Julio bleeping Jones, A.J. Brown being the best wide receiver on your football team, he may be the person whose stock I'm buying the most, because I think he continues to have a ceiling that we have not yet seen. I'm going to be fascinated to see where we see growth from a couple of these guys, and we're going to get into a conversation about underrated players on this roster with Coach Dave McGinnis. Don't forget that Titans cornerback Kristian Fulton practice scheduled to wrap up here at St. Thomas Sports Park at 10:45, so the Titans sophomore corner will join us, and we'll get into a lot about what's going on at training camp, how much growth he's experienced in the offseason, and all of these things. But I continue to be fascinated by the dude who is probably, who would we say, Lucas, is the best player on this football team right now, wholesale, best all-around football player for the Tennessee Titans? Who, if I posed to you that question and you had to pick one name, because they got a handful to pick from, who are you going with?
Best all-around football player on this team, I think, is A.J. Brown.
Over Derrick Henry.
I think it's A.J. Brown.
Okay, so clarify for me. Why is that your position?
Derrick Henry is a dominant runner. He's the best runner in football. But as far as his position, and I know people are going to come at me for this, but just as an all-around player, because that's what you're talking about, A.J. Brown can do everything that you need a wide receiver to do. Derrick Henry, as good as he is, you can't say he can do everything that you need a running back to do. That does not mean he's not one of the most dominant running backs possibly in the history of the league. But A.J. Brown can do everything you ask a wide receiver to do.
He is somebody, and I don't, the more, because I go back and forth on this question, right? I believe Taylor Lewan at the left tackle position to be a top 4 or top 5 player on this team. I think that Derrick Henry is a spectacular athlete by any measure of the analysis, whether you're looking at him just purely as a running back or as somebody who, as an all-around football player, ranks among the top 2 best players on this team. Nothing happens, of course, without Ryan Tannehill, and we haven't even mentioned Julio Jones. We're 4 players into this list talking about A.J. Brown, and here I thought we were the hell away from list season. But still, when you watch this dude out on the field, Teron Davenport had a great video of A.J. Brown against Elijah Molden, the rookie 3rd-round pick out of Washington, who has performed very well. And again, the one-on-ones favor the offense always. Always. So when I look at this, there is dominance in the performance, but I do kind of grade it on that curve, right? You know who is supposed to win, 9 times out of 10 in these situations. And when the defender makes a play, it's that much bigger of a deal. But Kristian Fulton, it's just smoked by A.J. Brown. I think it was on a crossing route. Teron Davenport had the video, and in the video, you just hear Elijah Molden go, well, damn. Like, what do you expect me to do with that? How am I supposed to stop it? And it's worth noting that Mike Vrabel said yesterday he looked at Thursday's practice, coming off a great first day, as a practice where they could have been taken advantage of if they were facing legitimate opposition. They made a lot of mistakes, it sounds like, throughout the course of their training camp practice yesterday. It didn't sound like it went as smoothly as day one on Wednesday did. But all around best player on this football team. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is probably up there in the conversation if you're talking about who can physically dominate in a way that we believe this man is getting ready to take that next step and do, in a way that they've provided him additional tools around him to kind of flourish and take advantage of one-on-one matchups. But I can't take my eyes when he's on the practice field. I can't look away from what A.J. Brown is doing. And on a team that is chock full of offensive weapons, that has superstars all over the field, guys who are established, who have been veterans and performed at the highest level, made the postseason. In the case of Julio Jones, played in a Super Bowl. The guy who continues to flash and shine the brightest is a guy who played last year on 2 knee injuries.
The
way that I look at this, the way that I look at this is that I think he has so much more room to grow, and that has to excite the holy hell out of Titans fans.
Got Alex in the chat saying Brett Kern. Both Alex and Chad saying Brett Kern. We cannot forget about Brett Kern as the best all-around player on this football team. He is a legitimate argument.
He was chirping at me about my flamingo shirt yesterday, so Brett Kern's on my list, my anti-fashion list. So I'm out. Somebody told me, Lucas, I don't know if you can see my shirt on Zone TV, but somebody told me I look like one of these like 1990s gas station drink cups in the chubby shirt that I'm wearing today.
Are you trying to one-up yourself? Because you had the cutoff hoodie 2 days ago, the flamingo shirt yesterday, and then the 90s drink cup shirt today. What are you going to go with Monday?
Well, I think, now that Will Bowling is out here taking pictures of me, and I'm trying to avoid clothing that shows sweat stains when they're out there, which I appreciate. It's good social media content, and I like that we're able to document for the audience and for Titans fans which of their favorite players and figures from their favorite football team stop by and hang out with us on the show. By the way, Rashaan Evans was great. John Robinson was great as well. If you miss any of our interviews, you can go check them out in the Buck Reising Show podcast feed. But I don't know. I think I like to now that I'm on camera, I am actually paying attention to what I wear on a regular basis. Lebowski says in the chat on Zone TV YouTube, Buck is going with the older over-the-shoulder banana hammock on Monday.
You have to one-up yourself. And then Tuesday it has to be better than that.
That sounds very expensive for me to have to continue. I'm just gonna buy different clothes for every day.
Is that so that's the Borat outfit, right? The over-the-shoulder banana hammock?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be listen, it would be very in 100-degree weather out here on the practice fields. It would probably be soothing.
Pretty comfortable.
But I don't know. The folding chairs that we have out here, I don't think would be conducive to good cheek health, is all that we'll say. Now, I do have that banana suit that I wore to the Christian Watford for the win shot against Anthony Davis my freshman year of college. The drunken banana suit that John Glennon has tried to get me to wear out to practice one day to see what Mike Vrabel says. So we do have that in our arsenal, but that feels more like a Halloween week of practice type situation. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved in the conversation. How much stock are you putting in A.J. Brown's performance the last couple of days? I continue to try and temper my expectations. I think people are so excited and so anxious to be excited about this offense that I want to make sure that it's not skewing the way that I'm doing the analysis. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel the more that I keep my eye on this thing, that I want to try and make sure that I'm not getting caught up in the hype too. But it's so hard not to watch this guy and not be fascinated with what the next evolution of A.J. Brown looks like in this offense, given the upgraded weapons that they have around him, which is crazy to say because they did lose a substantial amount of talent on the offensive side of the football this year. 615-737-1045. Lucas, we're having people tweet in saying that they want to style me. So maybe we do that. That'd be fun to get involved with our listeners with. Anyway, we go to the phones. Caller, we have callers on the line. If you want to get involved, 615-737-1045. Paxton wants to talk about the wide receivers. What's up, Paxton?
Hey, Buck, what's going on, buddy? Hey, thanks for taking my call. So, obviously, we all know who wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, or really wide receiver 1A, 1B. But I just want to get your opinion, man. From what I'm seeing on the videos, who do you think is truly good? I mean, how open is the wide receiver 3 position? Obviously, we brought in Reynolds to be the wide receiver 2, or that's what we all thought at the time. But he's getting bumped to 3. And then you got Dan Fitzpatrick, who looks really good, looks really quick. He's been working on his footwork. And then you got this McMath kid who has some really strong hands, man. I really like the way he goes up at the point of attack and just, grabs the ball at the air. So I'm watching that. So, I want to kind of get your take on that and see, do we have a 3-way race at this point for wide receiver 3? And I'll hang up and listen.
No, I appreciate the call. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. So the wide receiver roster battle is something that is going to be interesting, right? But I still think, and this, this may depend if you're talking about just in training camp or as we get closer to the season, it may just depend on who the opponent is that week, who you end up seeing in the wide receiver 3 position. Josh Reynolds, I think, makes all the sense in the world in the slot. He played more slot snaps in 2020 than any wide receiver on the Titans roster last year. Josh Reynolds is probably going to come into this thing as the incumbent, but as I've talked to, my colleagues out here among the Titans media, Marcus Johnson performed at a high level yesterday. Somebody who's been in the league for a long time but just hasn't quite found a place to stick. Racing McMath, Mike Vrabel talking about how they look at him as somebody who can be a core special teams player on this team, but also has the potential to be developed as a legitimate red zone threat, a big body wide receiver who is capable, who has potential, but potential is something he's been trafficking in. Potential is probably the only reason that Racing McMath was a draft pick, because for circumstances beyond his control, whether it was the guys that were in front of him on the depth chart at LSU, injuries that he sustained throughout the course of his career that robbed him of valuable opportunities to be able to put stuff on tape and show to NFL teams, I think it becomes a conversation about who they think can do the most for them after you get past the first 2 wide receivers, right? A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, a lock. Josh Reynolds, a lock. And Josh Reynolds has the ability to help you in that slot role. In fact, the more that I talk to people like Greg Cosell, who will tape another episode of The Install later this afternoon, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review to that podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast. The more that I talk to Greg about this, the more that I think that they may have upgraded their position in the slot by adding Josh Reynolds. But, of course, he has to come in and prove it in camp. He was very clear about this when he got here to Tennessee. He was very clear about the idea that he was coming here for an opportunity, that he felt he filled into that Corey Davis role quite well. Corey Davis, by the way, who played a substantial amount of snaps in the slot a year ago. Don't get too caught up in wide receiver 1 and 2 needing to be outside wide receivers. That's not going to be the case week in and week out. It's going to be determined by matchups. And I think that when you talk about wide receiver 3 on the depth chart alone, that you do yourself a disservice by not considering how different each of these players are that will be vying for that spot when they put the 46-man game day active roster together. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. But coming up next, practice is going to end. We're having an early day out here at St. Thomas Sports Park, and then Titans cornerback Kristian Fulton will join us here live at the training camp zone station, the zone tent, and we will have a good conversation with him. Also, we got to thank our friends at Two Rivers Ford who present our training camp coverage, make it possible for us to be out here and for you to enjoy throughout the course of this week and the weeks to come. Kristian Fulton coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hear every Titans play with Mike Keefe and Coach Dave McGinnis on The Call.
Touchdown, Titans!
Your home
for Titans football.
104.5 The Zone.
What's new at Two Rivers Ford these days? A lot, actually. getting ready to wrap things up here for the day. Shorter practice for them out here at St. Thomas Sports Park. Our coverage presented throughout the course of training camp by Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. We're looking forward to catching up with Kristian Fulton here in just a second once things wrap up. In the meantime, we've been having a conversation about roster competitions, and Alvin is in Nashville. He's called in to talk about the Titans roster. What's up, Alvin?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Hey, I was just wondering as far as the cornerback position, because they've been saying a lot about win now mode, but as far as I've been hearing a lot of corners been getting burnt as far as, on the practice field and everything. Are we going to look at a cornerback like Xavier Howard, or are we going to get an older corner? What are we going to do as far as that goes?
I don't think you're at the point. I mean, they may churn like bottom of the roster guys, but that's not something that they're going.
It's been the home of the Titans for a long time, and many more years to come.
Sack! Jeffrey Simmons is there.
Hear every play on 104.5 The Zone.
This is Boomer Esiason with the CBS Sports Minute. At the Tokyo Olympics, the spotlight is now shifting to track and field. Even before the games began, Sha'Carri Richardson made headlines when she torched the field at the U.S. Olympic trials with a 10.86 100 meters. However, she then tested positive for cannabis. This week on Game Time, I asked legendary American Olympic gold medal winning sprinter Gail Devers about Richardson's situation. She accepted responsibility, Devers told me. She said, I knew it was on the list, but that's what I chose, and it will never happen again. That's an important life lesson, that there are consequences. Devers added, I'd hate to face her in her first meet when she comes back. She's on fire. Devers' own amazing story of overcoming both Graves' disease and thyroid eye disease to win 3 Olympic golds
don't know if the Titans team weekend is about to be. Well, I guess not, because we have training camp practice tomorrow as well. Football season is officially back. But they are getting ready and have wrapped up things. The huddle is breaking now at the practice facility, and Kristian Fulton, Titans cornerback, will join us here at the desk in just a minute. But the conversation that we were having earlier is about corner depth and people concerned with corner depth and what's been happening, or the videos that they've seen out here at practice. Guys getting dusted by A.J. Brown a little bit. Don't worry about it just yet. Those drills, as I mentioned, are designed to favor the offense. But we'll talk to Kristian about what's been going on with that and how the competition has been in the secondary the past couple of days. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. 615-737-1045. So a couple of notes now that practice has officially concluded. Taylor Lewan, A.J. Brown, Roger Saffold, not out here. I saw Danico Autry, Jeff Simmons, and Harold Landry all go in earlier this afternoon. This morning. Going through stretch for Danico Autry, but he did go into the facility earlier with Simmons and Landry. So it's just something to monitor over the course of the next couple of days. These guys are, as Mike Vrabel will tell you, and I'm sure we'll hear from him at the podium later on in the show, we'll tell you all of these guys are on individual plans, but just a quick update. And I'm seeing from Teron Davenport, Ben Jones off today, Derrick Henry went in early, defense missing, Byard, Jackrabbit, Simmons, Autry, and Harold Landry all went in before the practice officially concluded. But some observations on the field, given that the field was directly in front of me today, which was delightful. Des Fitzpatrick looks really, really comfortable out here, because I know we were getting some comments about that, asking questions in the chat on Zone TV. He is looking like, and there will be time. There will be time to watch how he develops and how he learns the playbook, how he starts to become more nuanced in his route running concepts. I think ultimately, though, you have to feel great about the position that he's in, not having a tremendous amount of pressure on him that he otherwise might have if they had not traded for Julio Jones. Wide receivers currently gathered on the practice field in front of me, huddling up, having a conversation. A.J. Brown just walked out there to be with them, so I wonder what they're chopping it up about with Coach Rob Moore. But I look at this and say that you have to feel great about the depth at that position in ways that you haven't for quite some time, where we're talking about, a legitimate competition for the final roster spots at that position. Racey McMath, Nick Westbrook-Akina, guys like Cam Batson, Marcus Johnson, who has showed up, and Chester Rogers, guys who have been around the league, Cody Hollister. There's a bunch of dudes who you are comfortable with in certain settings and who have played snaps for you previously that make you feel better about your wide receiving core. Kristian Fulton getting ready to join us here in just a second, live from Titans training camp. The DBs currently going through their post-practice stretching routine, so we look forward to catching up with him here in a second. This I love. So Mark Mabry, who was after us about the United States women's national team earlier, says, NFL players are such sissies. My crew works 10 hours a day. They get an extra 3 minutes on their break if their thermometer hits 105. I mean, Mark, come on. Like, you're talking about two completely different lines of work. They are handled that way because their health is at the utmost. I'm not sure what you do for a living, Mark, but I'm quite certain that your employer probably doesn't care about your physical well-being quite the way that NFL teams care about the physical well-being of their players. Don't be ridiculous. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. So Des Fitzpatrick, a couple nice catches on the sideline right in front of us here as we were making some observations from training camp. Breon Borders continues to catch your attention as a good depth piece on this team, as a good depth corner on this team. Somebody who did play substantial snaps for you out of necessity a year ago, and found ways to continue and sustain that level of performance throughout the course of the season. It is going to be important because you do have a lot of different parts in the secondary. So any kind of continuity that you can find with a dude like that, I think is critical. And Breon Borders is making a strong case. Again, very early so far in camp, very early so far in camp, making a case to be able to find a place on this roster as a substantial depth piece. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. You know, they did make a signing today with his name is Spencer Pulley, adding to the offensive line depth at center. Certainly a conversation that continues to be had about the offensive line. Kristian Fulton walking over to join the show right now. We appreciate him stopping by. So we'll get him hooked up, and then we'll hear from the Titans cornerback here in just a second. Because he, I'm sure, is ready to get out of the heat, off the practice field. Take it easy. There's some Gatorade and water for you, boss, if you need it. But we appreciate you stopping by. What's going on?
Not much, man. Just grinding.
Yeah, no doubt. How has the grind been through the first 3 days?
It's been really good. You know, I feel like I feel myself progressing. I see the defense progressing, really the team. So it's been real good. You know, having fun being back on the field.
No question about it. I'm going to talk football with you here in just a second, okay? But I got to start.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
Finish your week strong. Flex with us. We get to know new Fox 17 sports reporter Jill Jeldon.
And let's get into this mess between the Big 12 and ESPN.
Today, starting at 1 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Heat emanating off him off the practice field. I think it just short-circuited our equipment setup out here. But we were in the middle talking about the trenches. I want to make sure we continue this conversation because what you're doing in North Nashville, I really respect that given how underserved that community is.
Definitely. Yeah, that's just, like I said, this is something me and my brother, we know once we was looking for a spot. We felt like it was a perfect location. You know, it already had some up-and-coming businesses.
Yeah.
You know, already had some buzz to it. So we felt like, why not put it right there to where it could be like a one-stop shop where you could come shop for some clothes if you wanted to do that, or you could go eat at Slim and Huskies or, Willie B's that's down the street. So we felt like it was the perfect location.
So why the trenches? Why is that the name?
Because, just Eric kind of reminded us where we were from. It's kind of a popular saying in our generation coming up now.
Yeah.
So we felt like it was a perfect name. It kind of fit the area what we had for what we thought, and with the Titan T, we got the trenches. So we felt like that would be a cool little ring to it, putting the two Titan T's on them.
Yeah, people have really gravitated towards it. There's legitimate buzz, and I love North Nashville because of the way that nobody, especially with the tornado that went through there a couple of years ago, there was when I told people that I bought a house over there, I got like side eye about it. Like, what are you doing moving out to North Nashville? That's not a place you want to live. I go, no, this is perfect. This is a fantastic community, a community that is very tightly knit, and something that, by the way, Kristian Fulton, Titans Corner, here with us on 104.5 The Zone, something that I saw was really important to you guys as a football team, as a community, the way that you came out and helped my neighborhood, my neighbors throughout the course of the tornado recovery process, that and bringing business interests out to Buchanan, which has a lot of up-and-coming businesses. You're starting to see the area develop in a way that it makes me very happy to hear, because the stigma that people would associate with the place that I live, I was really, really bothered by. You know what I'm talking about? The way that that people I would talk to kind of viewed it. It really pissed me off, if I'm being honest with you, Kristian.
Nah, it's definitely an up-and-coming area, and in the next year or two, it's going to be a booming area in Nashville. So I felt like, we were kind of one of the early ones, like you said, to get involved in that community, and I can't wait to see where it's at. So.
Yeah, no question about it. So we're out here at Titans practice, training camp day 3. You guys have a fascinating storyline to follow in the secondary. It's a lot of new faces. You guys added a bunch of new dudes to try and fortify this defense, and specifically the defensive secondary. What has been the level of competition out there on the field like right now with you all?
That was one of our main goals, as a defensive back group, just to come out and compete every day. I feel like, we have a really great wide receiver room that we're going against, so we ain't going to have no other choice but to compete. We'll see where we're at heading into, preseason and regular season by the time, we finish competing with those guys. And like I said, everybody basically besides, KB is, fighting for a starting job.
Yeah.
So that's all you need to know once you come stepping foot into the DB room. You got to compete, just to get on the field.
So speaking of that wide receiver, there's a bunch of talented wide receivers out here right now. This is as talented a group as I've seen in 5 years covering the team. But how about your boy, Racey McMath? My God. I don't know what my expectation of him was, Kristian, because I knew that, he had struggled to find the right opportunity in college at LSU, whether it was due to how many talented players were in front of him on the depth chart or the injuries that he suffered at different points in his career. But seeing him out here the past couple of days, I have been blown away with the way that he's performed.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. Got to work out with him a few times during the offseason. Obviously played with him. But, I always knew he was a big-time receiver. Like I said, going into, I think it was my sophomore year, his freshman year, he had a really good spring. So, he had a really good spring, and, something happened, whatever it was. But he kind of, fell behind or whatever, the injuries. And so I already knew he had the potential. And once I seen we drafted him, I knew he had a really good opportunity ahead of him, coming in with 8 guys like AJ and Julio in. So it was only nothing but opportunity to learn and grow as a receiver.
He's physically imposing, but as a defensive back and somebody who's seen him now in practice both in college and in the pros, what makes him dangerous with the skill set that he has as a wide receiver?
He's really physical, and if you could try to get physical when he still got speed, I believe he ran 4.3 at pro days. So I feel like he got all the tools, the intangibles, to be a great receiver. So you can't really play him for one thing. Like if it's like a big receiver, he's probably slow. If he's a big receiver, he's probably fast. Like you got to play all aspects of him.
How many opportunities do you guys have? And I know Julio and AJ are doing different amounts of work at this point, and everybody's on an individual plan with the coaching staff and with Todd, the trainer. But at this point, how did you approach the opportunity to go against dudes of that caliber as a unit and try and sharpen your tools that way?
Whether it's AJ or Julio, whoever it is, I feel like I got to prepare myself to be a starter. And looking at the schedule that we have, we're going to see some dudes every week, week in, week out. So it's just my job, to get better every rep, focus on something every rep to where I know whoever I'm going against, I'll be there week in, week out, rep after rep, play after play.
And it felt like you got legitimate offseason reps this year. Yes. Dude, I could not. It was so hard to try, and we do a lot of analysis and week-by-week reaction to the games. That's the nature of the media business, right? But it was so hard to kind of get an idea of your rookie class and as you as individuals because of the position that you were put in, not to make excuses and things of that nature, but there has never been anything like last offseason where the offseason just legitimately doesn't exist.
Right.
And we're talking of Vrabel on the opening day of camp, and he brought up you, Tier Tart, and Ferkser, who's over there with the rest of my media colleagues right now, as guys who, look like different players than the ones that he was coaching a year ago. How important was it to have this offseason this year?
Very important. Those reps matter, man. No matter how you look at it, whether you come in and start day one as a rookie or you don't, you need those reps because there's nothing that can prepare you for this level. And playing speed of it, SEC, you can say that, but at this level, you got to be prepared through reps and practice, all that. And the preseason matter too. I didn't really think about it, but like the games that I did play in those first 4 games were basically like preseason games, but regular season games to me. So it's like I gotta step up quick. So just making sure I take these reps seriously, whether it's walkthrough or practice reps.
No, it's admirable. You did step up in your first opportunities. I remember your first home game, you had an interception.
Yes,
I mean, it was something where you made the rest of us. You left an impression on all of us who watch you guys and cover you guys on a daily basis, and clearly on the coaching staff as you try and figure out what exactly this new look defense is going to be. I asked Rashawn this yesterday, and he was on the show. Kristian Fulton here with us on 104.5 The Zone, by the way. What do you guys want the identity of this defense to be in 2021?
We just want to bring that swag. We want to bring arrogance to us. That's what you got to have to be a championship defense. And I feel that already. Being here just the first 3 days. We trying to play with more speed, more arrogance, more confidence. And the more confident you is in everybody else around you, the faster you can play. The more confident in yourself, the faster you can play. And those things that we're trying to take into account, we want to hold everybody accountable for their job. So I believe that's the blueprints of building that defense up for us.
We talked about the offseason earlier, and I'll let you get out of here in a second because I know you got to be exhausted and hot and sweaty out here. But what the focus was last year, the thing every time we got on a Zoom with you guys, whether it be you or Kevin or Kenny Vaccaro, the constant of communication always kept coming up, I guess, as to where you guys needed to improve and why some of the issues that were happening for you on defense last year. I was out here every day of the offseason, and third down defense, third down reps seemed like such a critical part of what they were trying to get across to you guys. How big a difference did that make? How much further ahead do you feel as a group having that opportunity and having that hyper focus on that particular element of the game?
It's definitely a focus, but we got to be better on first, second down, just to get better at third down, just to put them in some tougher situations. Like you said, the communication part is going to be big for us, just making sure we're all on the same page. We got to talk out loud, make sure everybody has the call and everything. Like, we can't worry about if the offense knows what we're doing. We got to make sure that everybody knows their part. And if you know your part, you feel confident in yourself. Going back to, one of our blueprints for being a championship defense, if you know your part, everybody communicate it, everybody will be confident in doing their job, and everybody will be on point doing their part.
All right, last one for you, and then I'll let you get out of here. Kristian Fulton, kind enough to give us some of his time. I've been watching a lot of A.J. Brown. AJ's been giving some dudes some work in a one-on-ones, but who in the secondary been giving it back to the wide receivers? Because I've seen a lot from Breon Borders. I know yourself showing up out here. Who in the secondary been putting in work that you've liked to see out here at training camp?
Everybody's been working. They all been doing a great job. But I like what Elijah Molden.
Yeah.
He's doing. I feel like he's been out here. He's been working really hard. Just to step into that role, whatever role that may be for him, whatever the coaches may have for him. But I like what I've seen from him, his play.
Kristian Fulton, Titans corner, heading into an exciting year two. Kind enough to give us some of his time. Make sure you check out his shop, The Trenches, up there in Buchanan, North Nashville. It's a spot to be. Yes, don't miss out. Kristian, I appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We'll come back, and we will have head coach Mike Vrabel's press conference live from St. Thomas Sports Park. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's up, y'all? Join me Sunday, August 15th for the Taste of Donaldson Hermitage at Opry Mills, 7 to 9 p.m. Celebrity judges, T-Rack, Nash, 40 food vendors, kids fun zone, beer and wine tastings. Tickets will go fast. Get yours now. DonaldsonHermitageChamber.com.
Here's a word of advice for guys about ready to pop the question. She's hoping for a world-class designer ring in today's styles like she's seen in the bridal magazines and on Pinterest. Names like Tacori, Verragio, Simon G. And these are the rings you will find at Genesis Diamonds. But not every store is allowed to carry these exclusive designers, so they'll try to convince you to go with their own
professionalism, and he got better and he improved, and I know that he would have been ready to go had we called upon him. But he's done everything that we've asked him to do in the off season. He's communicated with us, had a baby in the off season, and spent time with his baby. Then obviously made time to come here and be with us and work. And has gotten off to a good start here.
The biggest challenge for a pass catching tight end, a guy like Ferk, as he maybe tries to transition to more blocking, what are the biggest things he needs to kind of focus on in that regard?
I think when you give up, a size element, it comes down to technique, it comes down to finish, it comes down to, a lot of just, nuances that maybe he is going to not be able, he has to be really good with just to be able to block at the point of attack, and he's working hard at that, and that's something that he's focusing on, and then we're focusing on so that we can use him in a lot of different areas.
Fair to say that the better blocker he becomes, the more opportunities to catch the ball he'll likely get as well?
I think that the more that he would be out there, so the more that you're out there, the more they have the opportunity to block or to catch or run whatever play that we have called.
Ferguson mentioned, using his quickness instead of maybe thinking in terms of like having to be like a stalker or somebody.
Right.
Is it like learning your strengths are?
Sure, that's always what we're trying to do. If we said, hey, go watch some blocking tight ends, we wouldn't watch, Lee Smith, or a bigger bodied guy, we'd say, hey, let's watch, George Kittle and watch how he, his speed off the ball and how he's able to gain an quickness and get into guys, and then look where his hands are and look where his, his grip strength and how he's able to stay attached to guys, and look at his finish, right? As opposed to look at this guy just trying to maul you and, just going to try to out-muscle somebody.
Do you anticipate continuing to get chances to return punts as camp progresses, and how do you evaluate the competition there?
There's only 3 of them right there, so what was that? Kinsey, Rogers, and Batson. And, obviously we can watch how they handle it and coming off the jugs, but I think the most important thing is being able to make great decisions in the game, the preseason games. Hopefully we can make them punt. I think Brett does a good job of forcing these guys to find the football. He moves it around. He's got different punts, different kicks. And, are they strong with the ball? Can they get us a first down after they catch it? Are they making good decisions? All those types of things. It goes into, evaluating the returners.
Hooker seems like he's off to a good start in camp. Have you seen that yourself, and maybe what do you look for him as you kind of progress through camp?
I think we're going to have to go in there and tackle and put pads on and thud people up. But, from an early start, he's been, spot on in his communication, where he's supposed to be, his disguise, and very coachable, smart player. He's made some plays out there.
Yesterday you talked about right tackle and anticipating Ty coming back. Dylan's kind of played all over the place. How do you feel about Dylan's versatility and kind of growing that with him?
Well, I think for a young player that's trying to find and develop a role, I think that's a great asset to have is versatility, because it gets you to the game, right? To be able to say you can play all 4 positions, and I'm not saying that he could pull it right now, but, if you could get any player to the point where you could say, man, you could play 4 positions, that's pretty valuable piece to have on game day. But there's a lot that he's got to work on. There's a lot that he's got to improve, and to get to the standard that we want, from our guys.
When you've got a lot of key guys who aren't participating on a day like today, and some of them are your energy guys, and your tone seems to suggest you're not happy with some of the things going on out there. Do you find sufficient energy? It's an opportunity for guys to bring it. Are they bringing it?
Well, I think there were guys that took advantage of opportunities. I noticed Marcus Johnson again, to go out there and play. And that's what I always admire about players in this league is that somebody's going to take advantage of an opportunity, whether it's through injury, day off, a guy not out there. Usually you're going to find somebody that steps up and takes advantage, and then, if they don't, you get somebody in there pretty quickly that will. And and energy is about producing and playing good football. It's not about, the rah-rah and everything else. That you create an energy by going out and making good plays and working with your team and communicating and having fun. And when there's bad plays and you put the ball on the ground and those things are, you have to respond to that. You have to come back and try to finish a game or a practice when you make mistakes. And so, we can't do that. We've done that 2 days in a row. That's something that's going to have to get fixed.
Stands out as a position that's very young and inexperienced.
I didn't know which.
Tight end
Tight
stands
end.
out as a position that's young and inexperienced on this team. What have you seen from some of those young guys and what's happening within that group as guys separate themselves or try to?
Well, that position for the most part, is going to have to be determined when we put pads on, right? Can we run the ball? Can we get it and be able to create an edge and be able to block in the run game? And for the most part, what are they going to be able to catch the ones that we throw them? Ferk's got a specific role, and it's one that he's, developed and grown into here and has some comfort, a lot of comfort with Ryan on third down. So, we'll see here in a couple of days when we get the pads on and how that looks against, our guys on the edge.
What's the balance for you as head coach in terms of reminding Ryan Tannehill to take care of himself versus trusting that he knows when to do certain things and when not?
Can you be more specific? I'm trying.
Well, I mean, do you talk to him a lot about getting down? Do you talk to him a lot about not lowering your shoulder? Reminding him, hey, you're our quarterback. We need you out there.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we have conversations. I think we meet. They'll be meeting with Todd and Pat here in a little bit, and on those instances where we are out of the pocket and we turn up, that we're using good judgment. Where are we at? Are we close to the end zone? We do value Ryan's ability to run with the football when we ask him to, or if a play breaks down. And he's competitive. For those of you that have been around him, he is competitive. He has a high level of toughness, but also, we have to be smart. His availability is important.
Mike, you brought up in a radio interview earlier this week, you mentioned the Ravens game.
Which radio interview was that?
The one on our station, 102.5. You brought up the Ravens game. Ryan said it left a real sour taste, a motivating factor. Derek said yesterday that you're only as good as your last game. I know you like to move forward, but how much does that loss probably still sting with the core of this group?
Well, I think you have to evaluate yourself against, other playoff teams and how well you do. We've tried to create a standard here that we're gonna win. We want to play and host home playoff games. We want to win the division, and when you come up short, it's disappointing. But we've got a long way to go before we even start talking about playoffs and everything else. And so whatever's motivating those guys to be better and to improve, to play well when the season starts, that's what's important to me. My job is I have to be able to manage a lot of other things, and I can't focus, solely on our last loss. 31 teams are going to deal with, losing their last game or, not having the season that they wanted. You're either going to not make the playoffs or you're going to lose in the playoffs, and one team's going to win it, and then they're going to probably start back over again and keep building. And I like our core group of leaders, and I appreciate the message that they try to share and relay to our fans.
You mentioned motivation just now. As a player or even now as a coach, does not getting that national spotlight, does that kind of tick you off, or is that something that you guys could draw? Like, they don't want to respect us?
No, I think that we're in the National Football League. We get it's an honor and a privilege to play in this league. The preseason power rankings are out. We're probably in our normal customary spot, anywhere from 14 to 12, normally where we land every year. That can't be our motivating factor. We've got a lot of work to do, and this league is just so. There's a fine line between winning and losing, and having a great season and having a good season and having a poor season. So, we're going to focus on what's going on here and what's happening, and how we have to improve, and hopefully can string together. We're going to move on to third down. We know how big that is for us. That'll be, our emphasis for this afternoon, this evening, in the walkthrough, and then, hopefully we can come out and try to compete in some third down tomorrow.
Kevin Byard coming up, following you today. What was your challenge to him after last season, and how has he maybe handled things this all season to start going into starting camp?
I mean, just lead our football team. Be ready to go, and he's done all that. He's come back in great shape, communicates, and it's good to sometimes not have him out there, so it's forcing other guys to communicate and talk. And we've gone through days where I've asked him not to say anything, just to see what would happen. And that's a great asset, that he talks, communicates, and continue to work on his tackling and continue to improve that, and find chances to make plays to help us win. But he's great communicator, studies, works hard, and gets himself ready to play. And he's just one of those guys during practice on a day like today or yesterday. He doesn't seem like he's ever drained, right? Because he knows what he's supposed to be doing. So his mind's not wasting a bunch of energy before the ball snapped. And then obviously he's in great physical condition. So we're trying to get everybody to get to that point to where they're so comfortable with what we're doing that they don't waste a lot of energy before the ball snapped.
That snaps, mishandled snaps the last couple of days. I know Ben wasn't there today.
Captain Obvious.
Thank you.
Ben was in there. Ben was in there.
Today?
Yesterday when we fumbled.
Right, but today wasn't.
How many do we have?
3 in the last 2 days.
At least 3 in the last couple of days.
3, I know.
Yeah. That surprise, anything in particular? Doesn't seem like we see that often in camps before.
Yeah, it's most basic play in football. And we have to be better. We're trying to change the snap count up, right? We have different cadences that we use and motions, and sometimes, when you change the snap count up, and we have to work. We got to work at it. It's the most basic play. It gets the play started. That ball is going to get kicked, and it's going to go on the defensive side, and they're going to have it. And that's a really, really unforced error, and it's something that just can't happen. And so we'll just have to work it and clean it up and move on.
Today's the first time you set the ball with some distance as opposed
Correct.
to red zone. Does that change the snapshot of some of the DBs who now don't have confined space to cover but have?
Right. I think it will. I think that'll certainly give us something to look at, out in the field. And then we'll keep working and keep moving around. We know how important the red zone is, but there is some certain different techniques that are played, being in the field and being in the red zone. So, we'll evaluate those guys that were out there today, and, we'll be out in the field again tomorrow.
Why no kicking here today?
Head coach Mike Vrabel at the podium just now. So no kicking competition today for the kickers. But a lot of good insights to glean from the head coach. We'll come back and react to what Mike Vrabel had to say live at St. Thomas Sports Park. Well, actually, Lucas, should we keep it going? I just realized what time it is. I just walked over to the desk and realized that we were far away. What do we want to do here?
Is the heat making you delusional? Are you losing? What's going on?
No, I can't carry it. I walked over to the press conference, and I'm trying to be professional about this. Kevin Byard just walked up there now. But no, I'm trying to make sure that I can do this without disrupting the normal flow of media availability and have Mike Vrabel chew me out in front of everybody.
Let's hang out for another 10 minutes.
Okay, why shouldn't we? 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. 615-737-1045 is the heat messing with my brain. No, I'm just trying to do a million different things here, buddy, as I know you are too. Oh, goodness. So what he had to say there is interesting about the punt return situation, right? Something that, I think a lot of people had looked at Darrington Evans and kind of slotted him into both return positions, both kick return and punt return. But that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. It seems like one of the 3 guys that Mike Vrabel mentioned, and I'll pull up my tweet now just to make sure that I got the names correctly. I heard Mason Kinsey. Mason Kinsey, Chester Rogers, and Cam Batson at punt return. So one of those dudes, this was the Vrabel's quote, Vrabel said the Titans have 3 guys currently competing for punt return jobs. Mason Kinsey, Chester Rogers, and Cam Batson. So if that, it's not like that couldn't change in the next couple of weeks, but you can make a reasonable assumption that one of those 3 dudes is going to make the football team, right?
Music City's home for the Titans.
Touchdown, Titans! A.J. Brown!
The flagship home of Titans Radio stays on 104.5 The Zone.
So we're talking about the punt return competition and the three names that Mike Vrabel brought up, how they have kind of determined between the three of them that they are going to be one of the three that has the punt return roles. Chester Rogers, Mason Kinsey, and as Mike Vrabel said, Chester Rogers, Mason Kinsey, and I just put the and Cam Batson. Sorry about that. So when we're having these wide receiver discussions, until further notice, you have to include them for all of you who are doing 53-man roster projections at this point. One of those three dudes has to be on the list, which is not something that I would have said. I would have also assumed until, as recently as yesterday, that Darrington Evans was going to be handling the return duties for this football team. That's where we look. That's where we've not seen, special teams more than anything, where we've not seen them make a legitimate impact in the last couple of years, really since Darius Jennings was on this roster in 2018 when he led the league in return yardage totals, but was not somebody who was able to hang on to the roster much outside of that. So until further notice, you have to consider those three as a part of your roster equations. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. It's also worth noting that Mike Vrabel said they hired a kicking coach named James Wilhoit to add to their kickers. So instead of bringing in additional kicking competition, they now have special teams coach Craig Aukerman and a specific kicking coach in James Wilhoit.
That is Tennessee legend James Wilhoit.
Oh, is that so?
Between 2003 and 2006, I believe. He was the kicker that, with the 2004 kick, beat Florida in Neyland Stadium.
Okay, look at you. Now, you said you think. You want to fact-check yourself while I'm talking here?
Looking at it now, yes. It was between 2003 2006. His 50-yard field goal gave Tennessee a 30-28 victory over Florida in 2004, the last time Tennessee beat the Gators.
So this is...
before 2016.
Yeah,
that was the
this man has gone down
until
in infamy.
2016. Right.
I was about to say, surely they've won a game against Florida since then.
What?
Dear God.
Just one.
615-737-1045. So is that the better investment, I guess, is the question that I want to ask people coming up next. Remember, Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio will join us at 12:20. But in the meantime, is that the better investment at this point? Rather than spending money, as we talked about yesterday, on Stephen Gostkowski, who you would have to guarantee the money on his contract if you signed him now, as opposed to waiting until the regular season is officially underway to guarantee his contract. Is that a better use of the finances until you can figure out exactly what you have in Tucker McCann and Blake Hallbeal? 615-737-1045. Would you rather the Titans have a new kicker, or are you comfortable with a kicking coach? Something that I'm sure is going to come up over the course of the next couple of days. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and maybe people didn't hear me because I think the heat continues to fry our connection here, driving me insane. But they did not have a kicking portion of practice today. Now, I every day I have seen the kicking competition every day that we have been out here, because of all of the fields that are in front of me, the kicking one has been closest to me in the last couple of days. And there was not tremendous performance by either of the kickers yesterday. Now, Mike Vrabel said they're just trying to be cognizant of the amount of reps these guys are getting. But, I mean, I guess not having done that for a living myself, I don't necessarily understand why that is something that they would not be able to do on a day-to-day basis with regularity. But we'll get into that coming up next. Your calls as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
I sold my home for more than I anticipated, and I got to decide when I was ready to move. I received my all-cash offer from Mark Spain Real Estate, and they let me move after I found my new home. They made it easy. What up, y'all? This is Ron Slay, and this review is coming from 3HL listener Melinda. If you're like Melinda and ready to take advantage of this red-hot real estate market, the guarantee offer from Mark Spain Real Estate keeps you in
because the grind does not stop. Football season in full effect. Some breaking news, though, in the world of the NFL. Not just the NFL, the AFC South. You see what happened to Carson Wentz today? Uh-oh.
Jacob Eason taking reps.
This is from Adam Schefter. Colts quarterback Carson Wentz is out indefinitely as he undergoes further testing on a foot injury that he suffered at the end of Thursday's practice, per Mike Wells and Adam Schefter. Second-year quarterback Jacob Eason took the starter reps at practice today. Sam Ellinger. That was the backup. Okay. So, I mean, it's already starting. And listen, I don't wish bad things on Carson Wentz. I feel like people hear me be critical of him and think it comes from like a personal place. No, I have no ill will, no malice towards him. But like it's not the same exact thing. Like it's not the same exact injuries that happened to Marcus Mariota. But tell me how this is any different than what we witnessed a couple of years ago with Marcus Mariota. Luke Worsham with a chicken sandwich that I'm sure is just slices of bread is chirping something at me. Luke, you're going to have to text me. I'm in the middle of doing a radio show, buddy.
Slices of bread.
I mean, he showed up yesterday. He's got a sandwich bag full of Hawaiian rolls that he says that has chicken on them, but I don't believe.
Allegedly, there's chicken in those rolls.
It's the grand charade. It's not the Titans kicking competition. It's Luke Worsham's sandwich meat. 615-737-1045. Cannot confirm, indeed. Thank you, Kristian, for bringing me a water. I mean, how is the Carson Wentz situation any different other than the injuries themselves from Marcus Mariota at the end of his career? Somebody explain that to me. This is the thing that this is something that you see with quarterbacks who have dealt with injuries like this that continue to pile up, that continue to accumulate. It's unfortunate for them as players, but that's why I continue to say, when you look at Carson Wentz, I see Marcus Mariota because they're both broken quarterbacks at this stage in their careers. It does not make me. They got worse at quarterback this summer. They did not get better. Carson Wentz is a project by any stretch of the imagination. This is not 2017 MVP candidate that sits before us or in the same division as the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1045. So I did a Google search about James Wilhoit. And credit to Lucas, you said Mickey Ryan brought this up yesterday on Blaine and Mickey, correct?
Yeah, Mickey said this literally yesterday. Like, why don't the Titans just hire a kicking coach? Not a special teams coordinator, which they have in Craig Ackerman, but a kicking coach like James Wilhoit, a Hendersonville native, a kicking developer extraordinaire, a Tennessee legend. And today the Titans announced they have hired James Wilhoit.
Yeah, I'm looking at his website right now, Wilhoit Kicking Academy, training kickers and punters across the state of Tennessee in Nashville, Knoxville, and Memphis, helping athletes achieve scholarships as kickers at Southern Miss, Tennessee, Arkansas State, MTSU, Baylor, Maryland, Mississippi State, and others. So they don't have an upgrade at the kicker position just yet. They have an upgrade with their kicking coaching staff. So whether, how much of this was previously Craig Ackerman's responsibility, that it is no longer Craig Ackerman's responsibility, we'll see if this makes a legitimate difference. What question do you have for me?
Does this lend to maybe an idea that the Titans would not be considering signing Gostkowski? Because you probably wouldn't hire a developer for Steven Gostkowski, right? But you would hire a developer for a Tucker McCann or a Blake Hobbiel.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it rules Gostkowski out at all. I just think that they are trying to see what they can have, if they can improve Tucker McCann or Blake Hobbiel substantially by adding a kicking coach to the point where they don't have to go through extra, financial hurdles, extra financial gymnastics, and kind of let their kicking situation linger as it is currently lingering until September the 12th, right? Because they're trying to avoid making that money for Gostkowski that they would otherwise have to guarantee. They're trying to make sure that they can still have some wiggle room on the other side of that, if that is the, in fact, break glass in case of emergency situation for the Tennessee Titans on special teams. VFL James Wilhoit on the staff. We'll see if that doesn't make a difference in kicking competitions tomorrow. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Coming up next, though, I want to talk a little bit about, Lucas, let's live produce the show, shall we? Should we talk about the Big 12 and the SEC right now, because that is news. We've done all Titans all the time. I don't have a problem doing all Titans all the time, but I don't know if people want us to talk about what the SEC made official yesterday, or if we should continue the conversation about the most underrated player on this roster right now.
Let's talk about the most underrated player on this roster.
I think I agree with that. 615-737-1045. Give us the most underrated player on the Titans roster right now. We're going to have this conversation with Coach Dave McGinnis coming up next. Something that I read an article about this morning. Now, we had some complaints from people about the publication that wrote an article calling the Titans one of two most overrated teams in the NFL heading into training camp this year between the New Orleans Saints and the Tennessee Titans. Those were the two teams that were listed. But I read an article this morning from that same publication about the most underappreciated Titans players, or the most underappreciated players in the AFC South. James Robinson, who I don't think is not appreciated. I think he's properly appreciated, given that he was an undrafted rookie free agent who rushed for 1,000 yards last year. I don't think anybody was sleeping on James Robinson. He was the only thing that the Jags had going for them a year ago. But for the Titans, they listed Harold Landry as the most underappreciated player on this roster right now. He's in a contract year, right? So contract year Corey Davis was a thing, and you can make that about the fact that he's playing for a contract, or you can make it about the idea that Ryan Tannehill was more comfortable with him in year 2 in this offense, and that's why they were able to flourish. You can make it about anything that you want to make it about, but consistently, Harold Landry is somebody who's going to be a big part of this conversation. Playing in a contract year at a very expensive position. The edge rushers are getting paid, whether you have proven historically that statistical production is your thing. It's not what Harold Landry is just yet. He is not a dominant edge rusher. It's why they paid Bud Dupree $16.5 million a year to come in and try and salvage this thing. But with Harold, the reason that they have him listed as underappreciated on this roster, the most underappreciated player on this roster, is because he was in the discussion as a first-round pick the year that they ended up taking Rashaan Evans, and he had some injuries that caused him to drop. But he has been their most impactful pass rusher to this point. 9 sacks in the regular season in 2019, 1 sack in the playoffs. Pressures, he led by a significant amount, 64. The next closest, not by 30 pressures. Like, Harold has been overworked and underappreciated, so much so that heading into last season, we were having conversations with Shane Bowen about trying to make sure that his life was a little easier, that his workload was a little less. Try and keep his legs fresh. Try and create opportunities for him to maximize his efficiency outside on the edge, or whether they're rushing him from interior gaps, whether they're trying to get creative with him, trying to just do more with him without blowing his snap count through the roof. And they did just the exact opposite of that last year, because they did not have guys good enough to keep the pass rush anywhere close to competent without him in the lineup. Thus, why they've upgraded the defense substantially. But as underappreciated, I still think that he has substantial strides to make. And we'll see if he's able to take advantage in the same way that Jeffrey Simmons, one would think, would be able to take advantage of one-on-one matchups that they will create with all of the different guys that they have to platoon. How that affects the strategy for the Titans on game days, where you're seeing only 3 edge rushers, 3 outside linebackers on the 46 active game day roster. How this affects somebody like Derek Roberson, who is now on the fringes, given that Rashad Weaver has been drafted by this team, that John Simon, a player who Mike Vrabel is intimately familiar with in 2 different spots, and who is a proven role player throughout the course of 8 years in this league, how this affects the competition after Harold and Dupree. But for Harold to be more appreciated, there's a reason that he's underappreciated. The performance has not been commensurate with the draft selection, nor has it been commensurate right now as needing to earn a contract extension. He can play a vital role in this defense next year. In fact, it is essential for him to play a vital role in this defense this year. But I don't necessarily know that I agree with Harold Landry as underappreciated. I just think that he's underwhelmed, even as he has been by far and away the best option that the Titans have had coming off the edge. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on this conversation. 615-737-1045. Who is the most underrated player on the Titans roster heading into 2021? We'll have this conversation with Coach Mack of Titans Radio as well in the noon hour for our weekly segment. Then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Final hour of the week coming up next.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
Finish your week strong. Flex with us. We get to know new Fox 17 sports reporter Jill Jelnick.
And let's get into this mess between the Big 12 and ESPN.
Today, starting at 1 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
here on 104.5 The Zone. Many thanks to our friends at Two Rivers Ford who have made this coverage possible for us and for you to enjoy throughout the course of the next couple of weeks. Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio getting ready to join us. Coming up next, Mac was out here all week long. He'll be out here tomorrow as well. We'll get his main observations through the first week of camp so far. If you want to get involved with the conversation, 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045 is the number that you dial. Lucas, can you hear the lawnmowers now in the background?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Literally, I thought they were going to back into the tent earlier.
We're just gonna slowly see you pushed out of the Zone TV frame by a giant mower.
I mean, honestly, at this point, after these 3 days, just put me down. I'm so tired of it. Just put me down.
Just getting started, baby.
No, enough of this already. It's driving me crazy, but it's fine. We're going to persevere. What we were talking about last segment, it's the most underrated player on this roster, but I want to circle back around to a bit of audio that Lucas just played you in his update about James Wilhoit, the new kicking coach that the Titans just hired. Now, I did not hear Vrabel just kind of slide this in earlier. I was walking over to the press conference while we were doing it live on air, but he just kind of slid it in there, Lucas, if we can run that back for the people, that the Titans have added some depth on their special teams coaching staff.
Where these guys are getting a lot of kicks in. You know, they're kicking off to the side. You know, they're kicking in our team period. And, you know, Auk and James, you know, Wilhoit, you know, who we've hired here recently to help with a specialist. You know, they come up with a plan and, you know, try to watch how many balls those guys are kicking. And, you know, we'll be back at it tomorrow, and we'll be able to evaluate them tomorrow. But they just needed, you know, a day off.
Just needed the day off for the kickers. That's like telling me telling somebody, yeah, you know, I've just talked too much this week. I think I need a day off, which is true because otherwise I would sound like hell, and you all would get sick of hearing my voice if I just kept talking every day. But that's what it feels like I'm doing anyway. It just I don't know how these guys manage their bodies, right? So let me not speak from a place of ignorance, but now I sound like Mark Mabry, who's been chirping about the athletes in the comments on Zone TV all day long about how soft professional athletes are. Now I'm get off my lawn guy. It's ridiculous. 615-737-1045. I think it at least acknowledges, because this is something that's going to hover over the Titans until they do something about it, or until we see that substantial efforts and strides have been made to get this thing right. I don't want to spend a month, 2 months into the preseason talking about the kicker, but the thing that has perpetually plagued them over the last 3 years has been the kicker. We talked about this earlier in the week. In 2019, they made the AFC Championship game. You know, Lucas, do you remember what percentage of field goals that the kickers made in 2019?
Oh, we just did this the other.
The collection of 6 total kickers that they had on the roster.
Did we say 58?
No, it was 44.4%.
That's right. I think my guess was 58.
Now, yeah, right? Just slightly above average. No, not even close. They have had 6 total dudes through this building at that position in the last 2 years. Now, they were slightly better, just north of 71%. Well, it's not slightly. It's a substantial improvement from 44%, but still not good enough. You can't have this conversation when you're an undefeated team having the opportunity to take another undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers team to overtime, and you miss the game-tying kick. You miss out on the opportunity to survive because of a position that you don't think about until you absolutely need it. And it's to the point in Nashville that there is no way you can have a conversation about how far this team can go if you can't trust their special teams. Now, I mean, I don't know at what point you start to hold that as the biggest criticism of this coaching staff that or of the organization, that they just haven't taken it seriously enough. But I do think what he's saying there, even as he just tried to slide it in at the end, you think he did that on accident? You think he just kind of forgot that there hasn't been a release or anything like that, and this is something, of course, we're just going to descend upon like birds of prey, the fact that they've hired a kicking coach instead of an actual kicker?
He referred to him just by his first name at first.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just Craig and James, Will Hoyt, who we hired, and then he just kept going. Oh, that was good.
Quick.
Wait a minute.
Hope nobody noticed. 615-737-1045. But in having this conversation, I don't know how long you can be comfortable letting this thing ride out, right? Like, just how long a leash are you willing to give them? Understanding the training camp is for things like this. You know, Vrabel talked about over the last 3 days, they've had 3 fumbles. Problems with the quarterback-center exchange. Now, Ben Jones was not out there today, but he was out there for some of these issues that they've had. You would prefer to see them work out these problems in training camp. That's exactly what training camp is for, to try and fine-tune some of the issues, some of the rust, work it out. There's nothing wrong with that, even as it's going to be a talking point that particular day out of training camp. Kicker, I guess you approach the same way, but can you trust them with their track record? I am of the belief that you can't.
Well, Tomahawk Chop on the YouTube chat, I believe an Alabama fan says, Saban doesn't need a kicker. If you're good, you find ways to win.
That's the one thing that perpetually bothers Nick Saban, right, as kicker.
You know what's one way to win?
Having
a good kicker.
Having a good kicker is one way to win. It's important. It always makes me laugh. Saban has like a kicker that just absolutely whiffs one from 25. He's got the best players at every position, and the kicker completely undermines him. That has to drive football people insane.
I do think that is changing now with Will Reichard, the top kicker in the country, I believe out of Hoover. So I don't know. Once they're set there, they're definitely going to be unbeatable.
Doesn't Blaine hate kickers too? I feel like he just comes out screaming about kickers every time.
I don't know. I think people just don't understand kickers, right? Like Vrabel had said it with Gostkowski. Like, what am I going to tell Steven Gostkowski about how to kick a ball or how to make a field goal?
Don't miss or you're fired.
It's the one position, I've said it before, the coaches are not hands-off more than any other position than kicker. It's the most hands-off position in possibly in sports. Just do your thing.
Do your thing. Which, to this point, Titans kickers not consistently able to do their thing. Although Gostkowski substantially improved down the stretch as things began to settle in for him. You know, I mean, there was no more settling in that could possibly happen than the Denver game. It could not get as bad as that, even as bad as the missed field goal against Pittsburgh was to send that game to overtime. Coach Dave McGinnis is going to join us to give us his training camp observations coming up next. I want to talk to Mac about Kristian Fulton, who sat down with us earlier. I want to talk to him about what we've seen from A.J. Brown through 2 days, because he obviously did not practice today, among the many veterans that did not practice today. And I want to talk to him about this underrated player conversation. Lucas, do you have one that you think is not being discussed, not being mentioned near enough? Because I have one who I've ragged on all offseason long, and in fact saying they need to do something on the roster to replace him.
Yeah,
I'm gonna completely pivot. I'm gonna flip flop really hard here.
It's Throwback on Twitch said this, and this was mine, Amani Hooker, who
he had a nice interception today on Tannehill.
Thrust into a starting role, replacing Kenny Vaccaro. I mean, that's a guy the Titans have a lot of confidence in, capable of that starting role. But I mean, that's the question mark, right? Anytime you have a younger player, new starter alongside a veteran and Kevin Byard, there's going to be question marks there. But I think Amani Hooker would qualify.
I'm dying for you to show up to training camp one day
and
call
yeah,
Kevin Byard Kenny. What's up, Kenny? that's I got a funny story for off air about a Titans media member who once confused Jonathan Cyprien with a player who was decidedly not Jonathan Cyprien. But coming up next, we will get into this conversation with Coach Dave McGinnis. I'll tell you who I think the most underappreciated player on this roster is, and we'll get to your calls as well. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Mike Keith is excited for another season of Titans football. Yeah, we know how you feel, Mike. Catch Mike Keith and Coach Dave McGinnis with The Call on Titans Radio.
Your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
Cedar Recovery is here to help you feel better, get better, and
need to return. He never leaves. He's all over the damn place. He's out of practice. He's on the shows. Joins us for his weekly segment here in just a second, and we'll get into all of the things that he's been able to learn from Titans training camp practice so far. But first, we go to your phone. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Danny is in Kentucky. He wants to weigh in on Titans training camp. What's up, Danny?
Hey, Buck. Hope all is well, and hope you're staying cool out there.
So far, so good.
On the most underrated player, I believe, on the team, and that is Nate Davis. Love to know your thoughts, and thank you very much for taking my call.
Hell yes. Nate Davis is I can't say the word that I want to say on the radio, but he's a certified bleep kicker.
That's a good one.
I mean, Nate Davis, 615-737-1045 if you want to nominate an underrated player on this roster. Nate Davis, the leap that he took, and I think that's kind of what they're hoping from Dylan Radins, right, in year one, where Nate Davis got tossed into the starting lineup mid-game in Atlanta. I can't remember if it was week 3 or week 4, because Marcus Mariota had a great game. It was the one game that I think kept him alive a little longer as the starting quarterback for this team before things completely devolved in Denver. But it might have been week 4, right? Because week 3 was Thursday Night Football in Jacksonville, and that was an atrocious game that we saw played. But we'll get Coach Mac's thoughts on this. Dave McGinnis joins us now here on 104.5 The Zone for his weekly installment presented by our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Like an extra set of pad, they've been protecting Tennesseans since 1947. Trust the fine folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Mac, my brother, what's up?
Well, good to see you, man. Good to see you. You got a nice setup there. I don't get to see you a lot during training camp because you're set up over there in your broadcast booth, but it's good to see you.
They've banished me to the corner, Mac, and the only time they come over here is when they need to use this third field. But that's okay. I've been able to learn a lot. I want to get your observations from training camp here in just a second, but I read an article this morning about Harold Landry being the most underrated and underappreciated player on this team. But one of our callers just brought up Nate Davis, and so I was curious on your thoughts about that question and those two players in particular.
Well, first of all, Buck, I mean, when you say underrated and underappreciated, you got to, I mean, my question would be by whom?
Right.
Because I tell you this, in the building and when you're in the National Football League, your players are evaluated and they're scrutinized every day. I mean, and your coaches are too. I mean, every day is an interview in the National Football League. Those practices that you and I both just watched, those are gone over multiple times and dissected. So there's not an attitude of being underappreciated or undervalued within a football team. I promise you, because everybody knows exactly what everybody's doing, where everybody stands. Now, if you talk about the general public, or
yes,
if you talk about something across, it's kind of like the draft. I mean, you've been through a draft, seeing what Titans Radio does. The general public knows about 15 or 20 names, and then everybody else, they don't know until you don't know unless you study and dig in on it. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about maybe the thing that I would say is that are not as well known. Maybe that is a part of it. Maybe it's not, but undervalued or underappreciated, there is nobody that makes the 53-man roster, Buck, on a National Football League team that is not valued and appreciated in a building and in a locker room. I promise you that. I've done it for too many years.
Certainly when you get to that 53-man roster and then, of course, 46 active on game day, all of those positions are critical, of course. No, it was more a question from the general public about, who they have been sleeping on, who has performed at a high level. And I think Nate Davis is emblematic of that, Mac, the way that he was thrust into action in the middle of a game in Week 4 against the Falcons. Jameel Douglas was benched, and then you saw him go through the natural progression of acclimating to the speed of the game, certainly coming out of a smaller school like Charlotte, a lesser level of competition, but still living up to the billing. And then last year, I mean, there wasn't as good. I mean, the Titans have a good collection of offensive linemen. But for me to notice as an untrained eye, as a media vulture, to notice interior offensive line play that way, I couldn't get over with how big a step he took.
Now, Buck, I mean, within that context, you are spot on with that. Now we're talking about something that's got some relevance. Within that context, you are 100% right. And now if you want to talk about guys that are in that context of it,
yes,
well, then I can tell you, I mean, I've been a big Amani Hooker fan since when they drafted him. And just to watch the steps that he's taken. Another guy that stepped in and has done some really good things and is having a nice camp so far, that I watch. I always watch practice. You know where I watch practice from. It's where, the coach in me watches practice from is the end zone. You've got to watch it from the end zone, either on one side of the ball or the other, to get the spacing and to get the idea of really what's happening and the intricacies of what's going on. And Breon Borders is doing a nice job. That's a guy that that nobody talks about. But when you watch it, and you watch me at practice, Buck, I stand over there a lot. Where the filming boat is, and I will watch the screen because they shoot it from up high. So basically, I'm watching tape during practice.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do and see. And so when you watch it from that context and you put that question in that context, well, then I think those guys that we just mentioned are fit into that category. And Harold Landry's been a starter. I mean, he's been a starter in the National Football League and has been, an important part, of playing defense in the National Football League. But Nate Davis, as you said, just because of what he went through, Buck, and you've already said it, he had no preseason, because he got hurt. He got hurt. He had, there were things but his development, you are spot on with that. So now I think we're asking some real football questions here.
That's Coach Mac's kind way of saying your first question was dumb. Ask me a better one. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. So Mac, you mentioned Amani Hooker. He had a couple of nice days out here in the first week, and the first week not concluded yet. We'll obviously have another practice out here tomorrow. But I saw him pick off Ryan Tannehill today, had a nice interception. Breon Borders, it's been honestly a Breon Borders love fest over the course of the first hour of this show because he too has had a nice camp. What have you observed from those two guys in particular that stood out? And what have you seen from somebody? Let's start there, Mac, before I ask you about A.J. Brown, because I don't know if I'm getting too excited about what I've seen in 2 days from him.
Well, but first of all, you don't need to see A.J. Brown for 2 days to be excited about him.
Yeah.
You saw A.J. Brown for a whole season last year. A.J. Brown's an elite receiver in this league. End of story. And that's just end of story. So
and last year on 2 bad knees, Mac, that's what blows me away. That's what I'm looking for this year.
Yeah, those dudes are different, Buck. They're different human beings. When people need to understand when you're watching professional athletes, they're different. Those are different human beings with but A.J. Brown is, and what a huge proponent of him I was in the draft too. Look, he's got a mindset to play professional football. I love it. All right. Anyway, what we were talking about, the thing that's important, the Amani Hooker, I tell you where I watch practice from, and when I can especially watch it, on that screen, from the filming boat when I'm watching it, and especially with red zone stuff. The first day, that first red zone interception that he has, they were playing quarters coverage in the low red zone, and I saw him. It was a 3-by-1 formation, and he was the backside safety, and you could just see he read the route combination on the front side and jumped a front side route from the backside quarter safety. That was his first pick. It was a great play. I'm sitting right there watching it. John Robinson standing right under the goalpost, and Rhett Bryant's right there by me. And as soon as that thing started to come, I said, Hooker's going for this one.
Yeah.
Because you can just tell where. But look, those types of things though come from film study. They come from being aware of what's going on, and that happened. Let me just say this too, and that's why practicing against your first units one-on-one in practice is really good honing skills, because everybody knows what everybody's doing. Everybody's nuances, so you got to be really good to slip things in and to make things work on a consistent basis. But he is. The other thing about him, Buck, and you didn't ask me this, and you can just tell he's done the different things this offseason. He's a third-year vet now. He understands. He came back, and his body looks different, and it's ready to play ball. And the way he's reacting out there. And so to me, he falls way, way in that category, and he's going to be a starting safety. So a lot is going to be expected of him, and rightfully so.
No, to your point, Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're celebrating Titans Radio all week because it was an exciting announcement to have that deal extended with the Titans Radio crew in 104.5 The Zone. We couldn't be more pleased about that, to have Coach Mack and Mike Keith and Rhett Bryant and Amy Wells and all of the people who put in, Brad Willis, everybody who puts in work behind the scenes to make that thing go. But no, Mac, I'm glad that you brought up how physically different Amani Hooker looks, because we asked him about this during the offseason, and he seems to have found a better way to not just bulk up physically, because the dude was, I mean, they're professional athletes. They're different, as you said. Most of them are going to come in looking stacked, but this dude was like thick when he came into camp, physically built. And now you can see that he's found a way to condition himself to maintain some of that bulk, to be able to, to thump on some dudes when need be. But I think I think what we're seeing now, and just in my uneducated view, is a guy who has so much more of fluidity in his motion to be able to move around back there that in his first 2 years he hasn't otherwise had.
Well, and that's the mistake. And you and I have talked about this before, just in conversations. A lot of rookies coming in this league. I mean, I've had years and years of rookies coming in this league, and I tell them, look, it's not about, they think they have to be bigger, and they think bigger means more weight. But what you need in the National Football League, regardless of where you're playing, you need to be lean, you need to be strong, you need to have endurance, and you need short area quickness. And the only way you develop that is you've got to train specifically for that, diet and everything. And so that's why you see those things with veteran players, and you see that too when veteran players, and I'm talking about 6-year-plus players, you start seeing them leaning up a lot in their later years, knowing that the extra weight they're carrying is not what makes them, helps them. It's the knowledge that they have, but the quickness. This game is a short area quick game. I mean, it's very seldom. Very seldom you're going to run 100 yards in this game. It's a short area, short burst, quickness, stamina game, but you need to be leaned up and you need strength. You don't need muscle mass, you need muscle strength. There's a big difference. And again, I'm not a diet and a fitness guru, but I've been around professional athletics long enough and professional sports to know what that means.
I feel like just for time spent, Mac, you could be a guru of whatever the hell you want to be a guru of. Like, I don't think anybody's going to come in and be critical of you about that.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but I'm real short of being a guru on anything. But I do know some things about the National Football League.
No question. Coach Dave McGinnis here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So looking at a player who comes in a similar position in his rookie year as Amani Hooker did, not necessarily pressure on him to be inserted right away into a starting role, some guys in front of him, some veterans that allow him some time to play on special teams, sometimes to work into defensive packages, but not putting pressure on him to perform as a starter right away. Now in Amani Hooker's third year, he has that opportunity. I kind of look at Des Fitzpatrick, Mac, in that same light where I think, I don't know what your observations of him have been since the offseason, and I remember watching him during the offseason with you, and you kind of helping me understand what exactly he was doing during these drills, that whether he was making mistakes about his balance or getting too ahead of his feet and kind of that disrupting some of the work that he was doing, and then correcting those mistakes throughout the course of the offseason. I think that he's in such a great position to come in with as stacked a wide receiver room as this is, where he does have those opportunities to contribute, but it'll be on special teams and allow him to develop as an offensive player in the meantime.
You know what, Buck, and that's true. And let me just say this. These types of days like today was, when AJ and Julio, when you're giving them their days, they're very smart to do. I mean, Mike Vrabel is really good at this. He's really good at it. But anyway, those younger guys get a big chance. And I've been impressed. I've been impressed with several of those receivers, beyond those first three, just watching them. And again, a lot of it comes to the fact that they're in a room with some real dudes, and that helps. A lot of it comes from the fact they've got an excellent coach in Rob Moore that was one of those dudes when he was playing. And then they're both, those two guys, Racey McMath goes into that same category too.
Right.
Those dudes are physically gifted. Those are big, long, fast, linear speed dudes that once they get nuanced up, they're going to be a nice addition as a National Football League player. And I agree with you. Both Dez and Racey, I've been impressed just watching them in practice. I've been impressed, watching Racey during those special teams practices too, because to me, and I watch all of it, and I watch all of it with a particular, thought process in mind, knowing what they're being taught and knowing what they have to learn, and then seeing what they retain day to day. But I think you're spot on. with Dez, and I think Racey's right in that same boat.
So to that end, Mac, I mean, the competition at wide receiver is as good for this team as it's been in the 5 years that I've been here, with all kinds of different players, all kinds of different shapes and sizes, all kinds of different skill sets, but a really as close to a complete look at the position as humanly possible, given all of the things that these guys are asked to do. A dude who's caught my eye in more opportunities, certainly today without AJ and Julio on the field, but even yesterday too, Marcus Johnson has had a really strong first couple of days. A guy that's been around, who has been in the league long enough to develop some of these nuances that you talk about with the wide receiver position, but really hasn't been able to stick in various places. What I guess is the difference? Am I just looking at a conversation with the wide receivers where Marcus Johnson gets left on the out sometimes because there are guys with more upside? Why is he bounced around the way that he has?
Well, because it's all about opportunity. And plus, it's all about, where you are at your point in time. A lot of guys, Buck, and this is something that I want our listeners to understand. Some guys take longer to develop than others. And some guys bounce in this league until they find that spot, until they find that sweet spot. But the thing that you said, first of all, he's a veteran player.
Right.
He's been around. He understands now, and he understands why he was let go wherever he was let go, and he will work on that. But the other thing is the more opportunities you get, that next opportunity, you're even more determined not to let go of it. All right. And so I think that's what we're seeing. And it's a very competitive room, but every room in the National Football League is competitive. You just said it. I mean, you're gonna go down from 90 to 53 to 46. That's just about cutting everything in half. And so it's extremely competitive, the National Football League is, but he's been in situations before, has had opportunities, has quite not been able to take advantage of those opportunities. And now that he's got this one here, you can tell that he doesn't want to let go of it.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mac, we talked to Vrabel today, and a question came up about the evaluation of the tight end position, and basically, he said, and rightfully so, that it's tough to really get a full measure of that position until these guys have pads on, just like the offensive line and the defensive line as well. Right. But at this juncture, when you're watching some of these guys like Ferkser or Tommy Hudson or Jared Pinkney, a lot of younger players in that room outside of Ferkser with not a ton of experience, and of course Jeff Swaim, what are you looking for out of the tight end position until such time that they can put the pads on and you can see a more full picture of what they need to be doing?
Well, we know how the tight ends are going to be used in this system. I mean, it's very clear. It's going to be a multiple tight end system, but they're going to move them around. I mean, I've seen things in practice now that I can't talk about things that I see and that I know is going on, because that's not, that's not what I do. That's not. But just I'm talking about scheme wise and those types of things. But they're going to be used in multiple ways, and they've all got their certain skill set. I'll tell you what, Ferkser made a catch yesterday in that low red zone on that back line. That was as soon as he made that catch, I turned to Rhett Bryan and said, that's the big time NFL catch.
Yeah.
And so he's got that ability. We know what he is. We know what a weapon he is on third down, because he's got a great ability. I mean, I think the guy was a point guard in basketball, wasn't he? Because you can tell that he knows how to fill and fit spaces, and you can see all of that. But you talk about somebody that's reworked his body too in the offseason. That's another guy. I mean, he just looks more stout. He's stronger. He's quicker. But Coach Vrabel is 100% right. Until you really want to get down to evaluate those guys that are going to be, in that box, or even in the run game. That's because that's what we're talking about now. When you put the pads on, when you're going to evaluate those guys, you got to see what's happening with the pads on, and we've got plenty of time to do that. And those other guys, Anthony Ferkser is going to be on this football team, but those other guys behind him, it's going to be important for them. All of those padded practices, Buck, those padded practices against Tampa Bay that are going to be coming up, later on in the month of August, and also those 3 preseason games. We'll have plenty of time to evaluate those guys, but there's going to be multiple tight ends used in this offense.
You're so spot on to bring up Ferkser's physical transformation as well, because his lower body, that dude,
yes.
he got big in a hurry. That was something that Vrabel brought up with both Kristian Fulton and T.R. Tart about just how beneficial a normalized offseason was for those three players. It seems to me we'll see how they're able to bring what they learned last year and what they've learned throughout the course of their careers and translate it onto the field rather. But from a physical standpoint, there is a notable difference in a lot of dudes out here.
Yeah, well, let's just not stay big. Big is not it. Big's not what you want. I mean, big's not it. It's strength. It's strength, and that's what you can tell. They're definitely stronger and leaned up, and that's important because this 17 games this year and 18 weeks, that's a grind. And so the work that you put in now, because you're not going to build any of that during the season, you're going to maintain what you've already built during the offseason. That's what's going on, and you can tell some guys came into this with a great strength foundation, and that's a real credit to them. It's a credit to Frank Marino. It's a credit to the dedication they have to do, because what these players do away from the facility is as important as what they do in it. And you can tell a lot of them have really put in some honest and some real constructive work.
The foundation of all of our football knowledge is Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio, kind enough to join us every Friday here on 104.5 The Zone and across the shows. Make sure you don't miss Mac's appearances with anybody presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Mac, I'm looking forward to being out here tomorrow with you and actually getting a more full picture than I have in my over here in my purgatory tent. So we'll see you tomorrow, and thanks for the time as always.
Buck, always, it's not a purgatory tent. You are there for a reason. You're doing a good job, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Coach Dave McGinnis, kind as always, to give us some of his time. All right, we will come back. We will wrap up the week. We will wrap up the show. Poll questions with Lucas Pan Poll Zika coming up next.
We've been the home of your Titans for a long time.
Derrick Henry.
Your Titans still play here.
Touchdown, Titans.
Titans Radio lives on 104.5 The Zone.
I sold my home for more than I anticipated, and I got to decide when I was ready to move. I received my all-cash offer from Mark Spain Real Estate, and they let me move after I found my new home. They made it easy. What up, y'all? This is Ron Slay, and this review is coming from 3HL listener Melinda. If you're like Melinda and ready to take advantage of this red-hot real estate market, the guarantee offer from Mark Spain Real Estate keeps you in control. You can sell your home fast or choose when you want to move after you find your new home. There are no showings, no open houses, no stress. It's that simple. Mark Spain Real Estate has earned over 6,000 five-star reviews. Sell your home with the most trusted real estate team. If you're like Melinda and ready to take advantage of this red-hot real estate market, the guarantee offer from Mark Spain Real Estate keeps you in control. You can sell your home fast or choose when you want to move after you find your new home. Go to markspain.com today. That's markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer on your home today. Or call 855-299-SOLD.
Switching and saving with your local Geico agent sure is easy. It's as easy as taking candy from a baby. And since she's a baby, she doesn't even know what candy is. She holds in her chubby little hand, she says, goo goo gaga, which translates roughly to, take the candy. So yeah, Geico. Contact your local agent and see how easy savings can be.
Southern Trophy House offers much more than trophies and awards. As a trusted, locally owned business serving Middle Tennessee for more than 60 years, they offer promotional and advertising specialty items to keep your brand visible. From embroidered and screen-printed apparel to corporate awards, signs, name badges, and more. Let them handle packing and shipping directly to your customers or employees, delivering top-quality merch and awards to your business and clients that need to be recognized. Give them a call today at 615-256-7295 or online at southerntrophy.com.
here at Titans training camp, getting ready to wrap things up and get the hell out of here until tomorrow when I can get a fuller measure of what is happening on these practice fields. But we will do that tomorrow, and I will enjoy that tomorrow. We will do polls in a minute. But I want to make sure that if you haven't subscribed to our podcast already, you're screwing up, because John Robinson, Rashaan Evans, Kristian Fulton, all great this week. We're going to have many more guests from Titans camp next week as well, so you're going to want to make sure that you're catching up with all of it, because these dudes, this is a great opportunity for us to be able to get a little one-on-one FaceTime with them in a way that we have not in like 18 months. It's as relaxed and as enjoyable an interview setting as we've gotten to experience. So we hope the audience has enjoyed those as well. And if you missed any of those, go subscribe, rate, and review. Polls.
Not now, Jenny. I'm on the radio. Buck Reising gave me a job. Said something about a poll update. Hope that wasn't at that club where you became a folk singer. Anyway, Buck Reising's producer and correspondent has the final poll update. I'm not a smart man, but I know who Lucas Panzica is.
One of these days I get questions about whether this is simple, Jack. I'm afraid that Rhett Bryan's Forrest Gump impression is going to get us canceled. But it's great.
It's really good.
It's so good.
Folk singer.
Folk singer. It scares me every time he says it.
Why did Texas A&M vote yes to Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC? It was a unanimous vote across all 14 schools. Josh says Greg Sankey told them to.
We didn't talk about this. Yes, it has been made official. The SEC has extended an invitation on a unanimous vote from their member institutions. All 14 of them voted to extend an invite to Texas and Oklahoma to join the Conference of Champions. Not the Pac-12, Bill Walton. It is, in fact, the SEC. I mean, can you imagine how pissed off and miserable Ross Bjork has to be as the athletic director of Texas A&M?
Right.
Sitting in the meeting and being told like a child, we don't know this to be so. But just I have a mental image in my head of Ross Bjork being sat down by Greg Sankey and every other AD of the other 13 institutions standing behind Sankey, and just Sankey wagging a finger.
You'll be good now.
Ross Bjork being like, don't you bleeping embarrass us. You better damn vote with the rest of us, because if it's not unanimous, I'm going to start getting questions that I don't want to deal with, and then it's going to be on your head. I mean, what do we think that Sankey threatened them with? Because there had to be threats. This is like Game of Thrones. This is like the American political system where you're whipping the votes behind the scenes, House of Cards type stuff, to make sure that that A&M falls in line.
I don't know. I mean, Greg Sankey, I'm sure, was very confident that this vote was going to fall into place regardless of what Texas A&M voted. It may have just been on Texas A&M's end. I mean, at 2016 Cavaliers sums it up here. He said, because it was a lose-lose situation. If they voted no, they're looked at as a poor sport and trying to prohibit growth. They know Texas and Oklahoma are a done deal, so they vote yes and have people question it as well. 10 years from now, no one will care they voted yes.
Yeah, that's true. But it's so much more fun to imagine what would have happened
absolutely.
if they just voted no.
You have to imagine there were backdoor conversations with Ross Bjork and other SEC schools, and I'm sure they did their part to try and fight this, but at some point it came down to optics, I would imagine.
They were thwarted before it ever made it to the floor. That's how it goes.
Does the NBA have the worst draft in sports? 70% say yes.
I got so mad when I started seeing Keon Johnson tweets getting drafted to the Knicks, knowing that he would end up not on two different teams over the course of the evening. 3 different teams, right? Because he ended up getting traded to the Clippers from the Knicks. But then where did he ultimately end up?
Yeah, he was drafted by the Knicks. He is a Clipper. I think he was a Piston for like 10 seconds.
God almighty.
Yes, he is going to be an LA Clipper.
Why is the NBA draft like this?
It's so dumb.
What I mean, one, I did not know it was on until Lucas said in my headset as the radio show was starting, "Oh, the NBA draft's on tonight."
Lucas' first take was on the television. Yeah,
Look,
Kendrick Perkins is talking about something.
I know. I was getting like legitimately upset with my ESPN app because they were pinging me with every draft pick in the NBA draft. I'm like, don't. Why?
Okay, that's the other thing, because every pick gets leaked like 5 minutes before the pick is announced. That's a whole other reason. And you're making these prospects put on hats for teams that they're not going to be on. Like, did Kobe Bryant not put on a Charlotte Hornets hat when he got drafted? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's an utter and complete waste of time. The NBA's draft is the worst of the drafts, hands down. And listen, MLB's draft goes in anonymity as well. Like, it just pops up in the middle of a Wednesday, and there's 7,500 rounds, and all of a sudden you look up and Kumar Rocker is falling out of the sky because apparently he has a shoulder problem or something like that. Jesus.
Yeah, you're seeing like so-and-so from like South Dakota Community College drafted in the 85th round of the MLB draft.
Get it out of here.
Luke Worsham said it is baseball because they don't play for years. By the way, Luke's new profile picture is from his appearance on the 104.5 The Zone set with you yesterday.
Oh, that little clout chasing. Look at him. He's out here copping to Googling himself. Have you ever Googled yourself, by the way?
Actually,
be honest.
I don't think I have.
No?
I might now that you say that.
Okay.
I've definitely done the old scrub through Twitter to,
The social media
you
cleanse.
just never know.
The purge, yeah. I did that coming out of college because God knows we were reckless on the internet prior to being a paid professional. I have definitely Googled myself in my life. It is among my worst qualities. I regret nothing, but Luke Worsham doing it made me laugh yesterday because I just realized that, I'm not the only one who's this way, which makes me happy.
Who's the most underrated player on the Titans? Our friend Davey Shepard said nationally it's Saffold, locally Harold Landry.
I don't know how I feel about Harold in that conversation, right? And I think Coach Mack made some good points that nobody in that facility is undervalued or underappreciated. But we're talking about from an optics standpoint. Like, Harold Landry is by far and away, or has been by far and away, their best pass rusher. But if your pass rush stinks, then how good is your best pass rusher, right? Malcolm Butler was their best corner last year, but if your third down defense stinks, how good is your best corner? I struggle with that conversation. But the two offensive linemen, Nate Davis and Roger Saffold, perpetually underrated because they beat the holy hell out of dudes. Roger Saffold is one of the best offensive linemen, full stop, in the league. Former
Titan wide receiver Nate Washington chipped in. He said Ben Jones.
Nate's spot on with that because Ben Jones was getting some heat a couple of years ago when he was playing next to Quentin Spain and who was that mound of humanity that was so uninteresting? Josh Klein. Josh Klein is one of those football players that you look like and you're like, oh, you just made it here on pure size alone. You have no muscle definition to you whatsoever. Now, I'm sure Josh Klein could pick me up and throw me like a javelin, but that and how dull he was as an interview. I do not have fond memories of the Josh Klein experience. But Ben Jones looked markedly better when they upgraded the guards on either side of him because Ben Jones has been one of the most consistent and most reliable players on this football team. He does not miss games.
Seen some shouts for Anthony Ferkser, Breon Borders as well. But I think this show, I said Amani Hooker. This show has kind of led me to say Nate Davis at the end of it.
Yep, that's the right answer.
How much stock do you put on A.J. Brown dominating Titans training camp? A lot, a little, or none? 41%, nearly 400 votes, said a lot. 38% say a little. 21% say none.
A lot. I'll say a lot. I know it's only 2 days of him, but I'll say a lot. We had this whole conversation about him earlier. The dude is coming off 2 bum knees and still had a kick-ass year. Like A.J. Brown, I think that we are just starting to scratch the surface with what this guy is able to do. And as a media member, as somebody who gets to watch this, and who has no rooting I will say that I have financial rooting interest in the success of the football team because if they suck, then this radio show is probably going to suck because I don't want to talk about bad football. I don't want to go back to 12-9 overtime touchdownless games against the winless Cleveland Browns. I don't want to live that life anymore.
You didn't like that?
I did not like that. In fact, Titans fans, when I was first getting started, hated me because I would just bury their favorite team for how god-awful they were to watch on the football field. So I'm happy to be farther away from that time period. But yeah, I'm stocked the hell up on A.J. Brown, which is ridiculous to say because the stock couldn't be higher. Is that it? Those are the polls. All right, very good. We will see you next week. Have a fantastic weekend. More coverage from Titans training camp tomorrow on social media. A new episode of The Install with Greg Cosell comes your way in just about 2 hours. Look forward to it. We're talking about the teams that could thwart the Titans in the AFC. See you Monday.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
Finish your week strong. Flex with us. We get to know new Fox 17 sports reporter Jill Jeldon.
And let's get into this mess between the Big 12 and ESPN.
Today, starting at 1 p.m.